Go ahead, but you're live. You were talking. Oh no, no,
I
there's
was
nobody. There's
talking. I was
nobody.
talking to Eric Rankin before we went on,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
of course, my radio partner, your friend.
Yes.
Um, and I was saying, gosh, it seems like we just spoke, but it feels like 10 years ago because so much is happening so quickly. It's really crazy. But congratulations on
Mm.
your festival. I heard it was amazing,
It was. It
and
was. It was incredible. It was. But I think it occurred and it represented what's happening everywhere and what you're referring to.
Mhm.
It's superseding everything. It's superseding the way we think, the way we act, the belief systems that we've given our power over to. I mean, I was watching videos last night, and it was a Sky, what is it, Sky News in Australia, and they were
Mhm.
saying there was 30 cases. Now, this was 2 hours. The broadcast had been posted 2 hours before. Um, 30 cases of the COVID in Australia, in a country with 25 million people, and yet two territories are totally shut down. I think they have 7 states or whatever, and all the borders are closed. I mean, and I'm looking at it going, wow, I feel like I'm in dimension anyway, more and more every day. It feels less physical and more, the sensitivities are much, much higher. It feels like dimension. And I'm trying to play with that, play with, okay, I'm in dimension. I'm not in this, what I thought it was. And, but to be in that state and watching this broadcast, I was going, this is trippy. This is like funny. It's like we've watched movies, like sci-fi movies over the years where you have these. I don't know if you've ever seen like 1984 or
Sure.
so many other dystopian type, post apocalypse, whatever you want to call it, and the really like the caricature of the collective communications, such as a newscast or such as events, or it's crazy. It's just like everything's flipped upside down.
It's duality in our faces is what I
Hmm.
feel.
Hmm.
It's seeing the split. It's like a great divide, and I've heard you talk about 0 point and not giving energy over to um not giving our energy over to things that are ugly or dark, and
Hmm.
coming back into oneness.
Yeah.
um I I sit with it all right now and observe. And there's more than anything, I'm seeing a lot of this come up as like what you said. You're seeing one thing on the TV, but then
Hmm.
about other things. Like just this weekend in London, there were
I
about
know.
1 million people,
How many? 2 million?
million people marching. I have
Oh
friends
wow.
And I have friends telling me, showing me aerial photos from helicopters,
Yeah.
and yet the news in the UK is saying there were maybe 200 people in the streets, marching for freedom, marching for humanity, marching for our rights. And when you see how censored the media is, You, I mean, I can't understand how more people wouldn't be scratching, their heads saying, why are they censoring so much as far as the news goes? We're luckily we have developed these worldwide circles where maybe we haven't met in person, but we have heart connections. Like my heart connection with you. I haven't hugged you in person. I hear that I'd have to put my arms up really high. Eric, that was one thing. Eric came back and said, "Man, he's so tall." And I understand that. But we have a very deep soul connection, Todd. I have a deep soul connection with so many people that I haven't met in person that live all around the world.
Yeah.
So when we are talking behind the scenes, I think it is important that we have awareness that there is something happening, and it doesn't mean we have to give it our energy forcefully and negative with a lot of negativity, because
Yeah.
we don't want to stay in that place. But in order to get to where we want to go, it's so important to have awareness of what's going on many different levels and what's playing out. And there are a lot of things playing out for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, I've heard my daughter say a lot. You know, don't go into conspiracy theories with me, Mom. You know, my answer is, how do we know it's a theory? That's a term that was put out there so that people would mock it, and then you'd want to
Mm-hmm.
be. It's like propaganda. You want
It
to be
was
on the
invent.
other side of
It's
that.
exactly what it was. It was invented with the JFK situation.
Exactly.
CIA came up with it, specifically those words. There's a memo on it.
And it's important to know that. It's important to know where to get information. You know, that's
Yeah.
I put together a document for a few people this weekend. I worked on it because for many months I've been praying. And I've been praying a very specific prayer about doctors, scientists, nurses, healthcare workers, EMTs, politicians, people in positions of power, that the people that are in those positions that can make decisions or that can speak out with, you know, that garner respect. Who is Michelle Anderson that's going to speak to a medical situation when I don't have the letters behind my name or the training behind my name to speak to any medical conditions? I know what my body tells me. I know what my gut tells me. I know there's a lot of conflicting information out there, but my prayer was that those with a conscience would start coming forward, because many of them have been censored, heavily censored, aggressively vilified. These are people that I've followed for many years, some of them. And I have a whole plethora of new doctors that I follow,
Yeah.
that I love the information that they're giving me to help me know what to do personally for myself, if that makes sense. Like there's a woman named Dr. Tina, Tyna. She's on Instagram. Her Instagram account has been shut down 3 times. Same with Dr. Bradley Campbell, Dr. Ben Tapper. Gosh, there's so many of them. But they give facts, they give data.
Yeah.
And so I worked on a document that I wanted to put out there for my family members, my friends, that have some of these doctors and scientists that are highly regarded in their field, that have been highly regarded in their fields, that are speaking up and talking about, you know, what's happened. There's Dr. Byram Brittle. He's a Canadian vaxologist. He was telling a story that after he gave an interview about what they're seeing with people who are choosing to take that shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's been a lot of heart inflammation. There's been strokes. There's been a lot of things happening because of that in normally healthy people. That's a red flag for me and for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I've been, you know, kind of waiting and watching and seeing what was going to happen on that end. And he's just his energy is just like this sweet, awkward, kind of nerdy scientist doctor guy. And he was saying that after he gave this interview, and it was he gave a parliamentary press conference after this, because somebody put up a fake website, a fake Twitter account, and then he was vilified. So going back to where we find our oneness in that, when, you know, how do you get back to 0 point when there's definitely sides being taken, you know, where these scientists are speaking up about how they've been threatened, their lives have been threatened, and people don't want this information to get out. one of the inventors of the mRNA technology, Dr. Robert Malone, was in a roundtable with some other people about effective treatments for this virus that have been suppressed. Because if you have an effective treatment, you don't need to go to an emergency use authorization, right? So it's interesting because I'm not a medical, I'm not in the medical field at all, but I also feel like it's important not to bury our heads in the sand and to know where to place our prayers, to know where to place our energy.
Hmm.
And I did find myself, getting frustrated and angry at points. And that's not a place that I want to be, because I don't want to stay mired down in anger and frustration. But I do feel it's so important that we have, that we have an understanding of what's happening when it's being very obvious that it's being suppressed and censored. How do mainstream people find information? Your program is one of those ways.
Hmm.
And what do we do with it once we have it?
Mm-hmm.
How do we use our energy to be effective at bringing us back into the heart and bringing us back into unity and oneness when there has been this plan in play to divide us? And
Yeah,
I'm watching that all go down.
I totally agree with you. I think that it doesn't even need to be said. The more information that we expose ourselves to, the more code we expose ourselves to, the more expansion that we plant the seeds for. So it doesn't matter. I love Malcolm X, and he has a famous quote where he says, after he converted and had his divine episodes and all, he said, "I spend as much time or more reading those things that oppose my belief system, so I can bring those things before me, so I can get more points of context." So you're absolutely right, and
I
it's
really
huh?
resonate with that. I really
Yeah.
resonate with
Well,
that.
it's true. It's like, can we have a discussion and no one has to be right? Can
Right.
we have a discussion where we put food on the table? Basically, this is code. We think code is strictly going to be archangels and galactics. We're the fucking code. You
Yeah.
know, we are birthing, and what that means is we're like the what is it? The foal that comes out of the filly or whatever produces whatever the feminine horse is, that's all wet and wobbling on its legs. We are Pegasus. We are not just a horse. We're this fantastic, mythical, real creature that's being born and getting its legs under it. And it's so important. It's so important. People, we can talk to her blue in the face about 0 Point and Soul Highway, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But the bottom line is we cannot divorce ourselves from any aspect of the universe because it all is us. And this isn't a cliche. This is about energy, the magnetics of it, and also the electric aspect of it, where Creator has made these multiple images in the image of, which has the same attributes and which is coming into its own now. How can you do that? How can we do that if we turn a blind eye? But yes, there is a real part of the journey which we get pulled in, and we've gotten better at pulling away
Right.
and seeing it for what it is and using it for the information that it is. Yeah.
And that brings me back to where we started with your conference, with more and more of these festivals and conferences are needed for us to be together in the physical. And if we can't be there in the physical, like you did with your live stream, you put the people on the live stream in the physical. What are we doing? We're merging our auras, if you will, in conscious awareness
Mm.
of how we are lifting and raising the vibration, and to really paying attention to where we want to go, where we see what's happening, And it's really important to be boots on the ground too. I'm not saying that we should shy away from it. It's really important that we speak up about what we're seeing.
Mm.
This is not about religion, and it is not about politics.
Yes.
And I've had many conversations with people, just, everyday people. The guy who washed my car the other day, bless his heart, my car was egged sitting in my driveway. I came out on a Sunday morning and somebody had egged my 6-month-old car, and now there's a nice little scratch that looks like a planet on my car. I'll turn it into something good, right?
Yeah.
On that paint job right there. But this sweet guy, he washes my car for me, and he right away, came over and helped me with it. And he asked me, he's from Mexico, and he says, what do you think about everything that's going on? And I said, wow, that there's a lot there. I could unpack a lot with that. I said, what do you think about it? You tell me what you think about it. So he tells me his opinion. And he tells me what, where he's been with it or whatever. And I like to get the invitation to talk about it before I start sharing my views and my opinions, because a lot of people really don't want to hear. They've already made their minds up on where they sit. And a lot of it is for political reasons. I'm an independent. I'm not buying into any party line when it comes to my personal medical health. So I have had conversations. This guy was great to have a conversation with because he was so open. He genuinely wanted to hear what I had gained as far as the knowledge I've garnered from many different sources that aren't in mainstream. You can't find these things on mainstream, not on a Google search,
No.
not on mainly
DuckDuckGo.
but you can go to
And
Telegram, and you can use DuckDuckGo instead of Google.
Mhm.
So there are things that are popping up so that we can speak freely with each other and share information. That's how we base decisions, is by sharing information. And we use our own personal discernment meter. I'm not going to rely on anybody else. I'm going to rely on my own innate intelligence that comes from that connection that we all have. We all have a connection to source energy, and let's tap into it and have it share with us in our discernment meter. I think it's a muscle, our discernment muscle, and make our decisions from there rather than basing our decisions on things that other people are telling us that may or may not be true. I think our body knows truth and it feels truth. And then we can go research further, especially on these alternative ways of doing our research with Telegram and DuckDuckGo and BitChute and all of this. Like a lot of the videos I've watched get taken down right away, immediately censored. And then I can just put in the title that I saw and go to BitChute and find that video. There are a lot of people sharing some really potent information. Especially, I believe so strongly in Robert Kennedy Jr. and Children's Health Defense. He is solid, in my opinion.
He just came out with a book too. He just came out with a book. I just saw it today. Did you see it? It was directly.
I think I just ordered it yesterday.
Okay,
I don't remember the name off the top.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the subject matter because I was digging a little bit just to stay abreast of everything last night, and so I was into Fauci's latest and just picking up info. But I saw, and I think his book is about the vaccination.
Yeah, I think it is. And
I think he's. He's presenting. Okay, so this takes me to something I've observed. I want to ask you about because it's along the lines of what you're talking about. So I look at the mainstream to see what they're trying to orchestrate. And again, I go back just as an example of the Australia thing. 30 cases in a country of 25 million people, and you've got this massive encroachment upon people's lives and sovereignty, right? And this is mainstream media now, and then saying that not even 5% of the country had been fully vaccinated.
Mm-hmm.
So there is an amazing, and maybe the great divide is not, oh, they're over there and we're over here. Maybe the great divide is, let's show you all the polarities and distortion in those polarities that we can. Almost like so much information coming from both sides, you're just standing there going, what the hell is this? The last example would be like, you're seeing, okay, you could take Gates, Fauci, Vax. You're seeing, you're seeing opposite frequencies coming into the mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can see the UFO thing. You can see that's just a bunch of crap. Like, oh my God, like who? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you see the absurdity of it, yet you still take it into your field, and you still know there's possibilities on both ends, whatever the case is. But the bottom line is, it looks like mass chaos. And in that chaos, there's this human hybrid spirit that's both within us, with us, above us, below us. You know what I mean? I mean, it's us.
Mm-hmm.
And it's coming through like the common thread in all the sacred texts, even though they differ in the narrative and this and that. There's this common thread of truth, which is sovereignty, which is freedom, which is love, and so on and so on. 2 million people in Hyde Park, 5% of a country being slammed with bullshit have only been vaccinated. There seems to be, well, what do they call it? When they have, like, say, a political organization or in the government, somebody leaked something. Well, there's a lot of leaks.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess where I'm at with it all is I am like you. I only trust myself. I take in as much information as I can. I sit with it and I go to work on myself and in the work I do. I don't believe any of it. The only thing I believe in is me and you representing all of our brothers and sisters, all the elementals, all the aquatic family, all the galactic, all the known and unknown, everything represented here in what I'm looking at in myself. And I see no other way to be in a position to maximize my potential and a contribution to the collective than to expose myself and consider as many things as possible. So I'm with you on that.
I couldn't agree with you more when it comes to how important it is for us to each be doing the individual work. And we've talked about this before, Todd, in terms of what was coming up in my own personal life at the beginning of all of this. Major stuff in my relationship, in my personal life. And it was begging me to peel the curtain back and really look at those core wounds inside of me, those little girl wounds that I didn't realize were running in my subconscious, and to look at how they were affecting every aspect of my life. And I think that we're on this planet to do this work, our own inner work. I don't think that I'm done. I did a very deep dive. And that's, that was for me what I needed to do. I needed to work on my own personal junk. And I'm slowly coming back into, opening my field up again to doing the work that I do with the different festivals and with Awakening Code Radio and Disclosure Fest and Portal to Ascension. And
boom, 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 boom.
Coming back out and, and seeing what you did at Soulogy. When you put those people together on that land, major vortex energy, and had so many people tune in from different parts of the world. Look, even right now, the hairs on my arms are standing up, and
The ones on my back are
right because, and I
have hair on my back now since Morgan doesn't. She has this thing called an epilady, and she only did it once. I'm just making a joke.
But what I think we're tuning back into the energy that was created
Hmm.
when you did Soulogy Fest,
Mm.
and feeling the expansiveness of so many people coming together in harmony. And I just came, the solstice weekend here in California, not in Arizona, but in California. Big difference with the climate, in terms of the divide. There's a
Yeah.
lot of division here in California.
Yeah.
We did our Disclosure Fest event on June 19th, the solstice weekend. Now, in 2019, we had 20,000 people at Los Angeles State Historic Park. So to dial it down from 20,000 to under 1,000,
Hmm.
we went from having 32 acres and 16 stages to having 15 acres and maybe 6 different areas, 6 different stages. But what's important about that is it's a mass meditation event. And what we did there, oh my gosh, I mean, the ripples that I felt as far as it going out into the cosmos, with everybody's hearts were exploded open. We started with the male bird singers with their rattles, singing their songs. And I love how they set me straight, right? On the schedule, it said land blessing. And Stephen Villa says to me, he's a Chumash man, and it was on Chumash land. And he says to me, first, I'd like to share with you, Michelle, that the land doesn't need blessing. The land is already blessed. He said, what we're here to do is to clear all that distorted energy that the humans bring to the land.
Yeah.
Of course. It
Yeah.
made so much sense, because how many of us carry our story around in our field, on our back, in our voices, in our hearts, and we carry that luggage with us, and it weighs us down and it lowers the vibration when we do that. So what they were doing from the very beginning of Disclosure Fest, the opening ceremony, they're clearing us with their songs and their sacred sage, and blessing each one of us, so that our hearts were opening to receive and to transmit while we were there, creating, a portal, an opening, so that this energy could flow not just to the rest of the world, but out into all the different realms and dimensions, and clearing all those distorted energies that so many of us are feeling with this division. And so after those men sang, then we had the female drummers of One Drum. I highly recommend looking at One Drum, DRUMM.com. These women, Ginger Grant and Marcia, I'm trying to think of what her last name is. She goes by Sewa. Marcia had been given information in a meditation or a download. The drum was beckoning the women back to the drum. And this is intertribal. So these are many different tribes coming back together to these big, like powwow drums. And they shared with me, I had never heard this before, but she shared with me that before colonization, both men and women drummed. The drum represents the heartbeat of Mother Earth.
Mhm.
So the prayers were done through song and dance and drumming. And when colonization happened, there was a law created that your hands would be cut off if you were caught drumming. I never heard that before.
It didn't surprise me. They did the
So
same thing to the African.
So what happened were the men took the drum into the forest because they wanted to continue their prayers. They took the chance of getting their hands cut off. They went to the forest, they drummed. But the women never had come back to the drum after all these years. So the drum is beckoning the women back to be the heartbeat of Mother Earth. I have goosebumps telling you that again. It was epic. I don't even know how I could share with you how touching it was to me to see these men and women come together, different tribes, but blessing us all with that wisdom and those prayers. And that was our opening ceremony. When we did the mass meditation at 2 p.m., We had Rhea Mana, a beautiful woman singer. She has a program, I forget what the name of it is now. Darn it. She had a bunch of children with her, and these children were singing with her. This little 3-year-old was singing super loud. She just learned the song that day. And saying mantras, and the women drummers were drumming behind these children. And then Shiva Ray, who is probably the most widely known in many of our circles, she's the most widely known yoga instructor. Beautiful woman, Shiva Ray. She did the meditation and then had the children doing the prayers and the chanting. And there's something to be said for the purity of what comes through children when they're holding our prayers. The innocence of those children is so important for these next generations, the 7 generations and beyond. And there was, we were sobbing tears of joy, of remembrance during that. So these festivals, we need them. We need to come together in person.
I'm with you on that. Yeah.
And do our prayers. And, I see a lot of people in fear about this current narrative. I'm not discounting it. I'm not saying that there isn't something there. Definitely not. But I think that we need to look further at why treatments are being suppressed and why alternative therapies are being pushed on us when there is treatment. And it's very important right now, I think, for each one of us to mind our own health, to do what it takes to clean the toxins out of our systems, out of our thoughts. Sickness doesn't just come in your physical body. We have to think about our emotional bodies and our spiritual bodies. And this is a great cleansing and an opportunity for us to do that in order to get ourselves back on track and in harmony with Mother Earth. That's what I feel is a very important piece for us to be looking at right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. From an energetic approach, because that to me pulls more people into a field of congruence or understanding. Because we're not going to, the specifics are hard for us to, because we have this built-in thing about, the way we operate, and that's all evolving, and we're becoming more familiar with the way things are natural to us without this BS, right? But my point is, I look at these things, and I would compare, just for a quick example, I would compare this to the JFK situation and 9/11. In both situations, you had this suggestive programming to whatever degree of literal that it happened in the physical or whatever. That's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is it is a template through a suggestion. Then there's this ludicrous insult to the intelligence of the soul and to the expanding human consciousness, and we just move on to the next one. We haven't even resolved the first ones. We're sitting here and I'm watching posts of people going, wow, they're going to release everything and the spaceships are going to land. Pull your fucking head out, man. I'm sorry, but this is the same energy, our mirrors, who are playing a role, however you want to define it. But the bottom line is, why buy the bullshit now? And more than that, why would we even consider, at whatever price we have to pay, why would we even consider moving away from the guidance that got us here in the first place? We regardless of what's happening, we are birthed. We are now these incredible points of reception and transmission in the multiverses that's now feeding the universal family, if you will, new code. how do you handle this type of situation? Well, the universe is finding out right now there's 2 million people walking in Hyde Park in London.
Yeah.
There's only 5% evidently vaccinated in Australia. There are signs of sovereignty all over the place. Those expressions and realities are being hidden, which is the exact template of this whole trip. We've been searching for something the entire time, and all the time it's been ourselves. So it's just a mirror of a reflection of the pattern we've had. I am right there with you. I'm like totally lit up the last 2-3 days, and a big part of this has been this encroachment, this infringement upon the soul that will no longer stand. I am telling you, I don't want to go into certain subjects, and I haven't, because I don't want to be part of division. But the time has come where the space is no longer wide enough to stand on.
I totally
So,
agree.
you know what I mean? So
With
last thing I just want to say,
Mhm.
and I know it sounds a bit hokey maybe, but it's not. And I mean this. And I remember saying this and writing this 10 years ago when I woke up and I first started Soulogy. And people would say, you need help. You need a psychiatrist. But my point is, at some point where the physical meets the non-physical, I am saying no. If you want to imprison me, if you want to kill me by your, you know, by your perspective anyway, then I'm all there for it, because at some point we got to say no. And what we're not quite God be not okay. What we're not quite aware of in all the awareness that we're gaining is how freaking powerful we are. One soul says no. One soul is the man that stood in front of the tanks at Tiananmen Square 25 years ago.
Right.
We are what we are, and it's not even begun. We've got like our pinky toe from one foot inside the water of our potential, and the math is different, and it will change like that, and it is changing like that. Thank you for letting me go.
It is fascinating. I'm really feeling into what you're saying about, many of us didn't want to go into division. We want to stay in our hearts, and it's very hard when we start saying it's us versus them.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's very evident and clear that there is a great divide, and that there is something lurking that's not leading us to that path of humanity's evolution. It's trying to pull us away from that. And many of us here that pay attention to your program are talking about an ascension timeline where we are evolving our souls. Our soul's evolution is so important if we want our species to survive. And so many of us are feeling that right now. And I don't want to make anyone wrong. On our show, we try to be very rational on this middle path, because we know that in our audience, there are a lot of different viewpoints. There are people that have decided they wanted to take that, and there are people who are adamantly against it. I don't want to make anyone wrong or shame anyone for their decisions. We all have to sit with our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to shame anyone. I do feel that there does come a point where we can look at ourselves and say, well, maybe I was wrong on that topic, or maybe I was too quick to make a decision on another topic, and to really do that internal work. But then what happens? Then are we going to go into fear? Oh, darn, I made the wrong decision. Now what do I do? That a lot of people are coming to me now and saying, holy crap, Michelle, now that all this information is coming out about how many people are actually dying from making that decision, or having heart inflammation or strokes or anything like that, I don't want to scare my friends that made the decision to do that. So I want to go back to how important it is to work on ourselves, the toxins in our bodies, to really get in right alignment with our healing, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and come back to that inner knowing that we're here. Our souls chose to incarnate during this time. There is a reason why every one of us is on earth right now. And
Yeah. And
it's
that, and I just want to make a clarification. Our souls is nothing external. This is your soul. This is me, right? I mean, we chose this. Yeah, go ahead.
we did. And tomorrow night on Awakening Code Radio, we have Michael Henry Dunn coming on. He's been living in Crestone, Colorado, another vortex, area. And we talked
Somebody else
about,
told me that.
yeah,
Somebody else told me about Crestone in the last couple of months,
go
and I
there.
believe they live there,
Very
or at least
cool.
partially. Yeah.
Very, very nice energy there. We have Mount Shasta, we have Sedona, we have Egypt, we have Peru, we have all these different vortex sites.
And we have the Soulogy bus.
There you go. And I think that's something that's coming more and more into our awareness, is that we can create these vortexes of energy just with our own bodies, with our own selves, on the land, wherever we end up. But Michael, we talked about titling the show Chivalry and the Templar Return, because there's a lot of information coming out about the Grail Keepers and who the Knights of the Templar were and what they were here to do. And there's people trying to discredit that. It's really interesting to see the divide around that. But what Michael is focused on is to embrace that energy. And we decided to name the show a different name because it felt important for us to it felt more important for us to have a more broad title. Now I can't even remember what we named it. It's already posted on our Facebook page, I think. Let's see. I don't remember. Applied Sacred Science for the Global Crisis is what we decided to name the show.
Applied Sacred Science for the Global Crisis.
So how we can take this awareness, but then apply sacred science to where we go from this point. And I'm looking forward to unpacking that with him.
When is that? Tonight?
Tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Pacific time.
Pacific.
On
So that's
Awakening.
9, 10, 11 Eastern.
But it'll be on Apple Podcast next day on Awakening Code Radio. It's on kxfmradio.org if people want to listen in live. We're also going to be talking about his documentary he's working on, Echoes of the King, and it's about the spiritual life of Elvis Presley, which is a fascinating subject in itself, because I was friends with Celeste Yarnall, she was on Star Trek. She was on one of those episodes of Star Trek, Chekhov's girlfriend, I think, in some of those episodes. She's been in many movies. She was a beautiful sister, just a beautiful light in this world. And she passed away a few years ago in October. But she had been in a movie with Elvis Presley, and she used to, whisper in my ear, Michelle, I want to tell you about Elvis and how spiritual he was. He was totally into Yogananda, and he believed he came from a blue star, like the Orion constellation. And a lot of people don't know this about Elvis. So
I didn't know that.
I'm really looking forward to this documentary.
I didn't know that about him.
Yeah. And
I went
talking about the return of the priestess oracle from ancient Delphi.
He said that? Elvis did?
No, this is Michael Henry Dunn.
Okay, I got you. No, he's okay. So Michael's talking about, the return.
Talking about that. He's having Kalyani Sundari, who she's another beautiful friend of ours, and she's been on Awakening Code Radio quite a few times. He just did his podcast with her called Return of the Priestess Oracle. And she's working on an incredible project that's very much like the We Are the World, Hands Across the America song. So she's getting more and more people involved. Singing is so important right now. I really feel like
Absolutely. I saw a lot of that at the Soulogy Fest because we left it very improvisational, and some amazing things happen. I have all the stuff downloaded now. I'm going to start releasing some excerpts, but I want to go back to what you said, something really important, because I think it's worth restating. So you were talking about, as a friend and as a practitioner, people coming to you because of the subject that we're talking about and all the different threads and complications that it creates. I guess what I'm trying to say is that, because one thing that's come in very loud for me in the last 30 days has been, once you make, there is no wrong decision. Once you make a decision, once you make a choice, and if that choice is I got the vax or I didn't get the vax, it doesn't matter what that choice is. Whatever that choice is, from that point, you just have a new choice. Now, there's a lot of evidence that we're transforming from this carbon to this crystalline. I know several people who are living with conditions that they shouldn't be alive. Something's happening. So we're getting support. And I think every day that we engage this magic, it has a bigger influence and a quicker influence on what we transmit out. Last example, and I've mentioned this several times over the last week. So we had a show with this lady, Amanda Smith from Sedona, who I'd met at the Soulogy Fest. And when we met in the studio before it started, her voice came out and it was like Alvin and the Chipmunks on steroids. But as I went to say, hey, let's try again. Now, this was after 29 minutes of trying to get on and all these other aberrations occurred. I heard push live. So I pushed live, and for 25, 30 minutes, we had a show where it sounded like it was a technical issue. And if you want to, need the proof that the humans think they're so smart that they need, as we are the lesser God genius consciousness, right? But if you watch the show, the audience was totally engaged. We went with it. We went with the magic. We went with the fantasy. We went with the imagination. We went with our strength. And I've watched it on all the platforms just get more and more and more replays. And what I'm trying to say is that at a minimum, I believe we can say to ourselves, because we've gotten enough information, we've had enough experience, we've connected enough, that at a minimum, when we make our mind up, regardless of the circumstances or consequences or the decision that we made, when we make our mind up, the result, the effect, is immediately taking on a physical quality, and so engage it. That's what I'm getting at, is engage it, engage the magic. And this is not some pie in the sky anymore. This is real stuff.
Our imagination is how we create.
Yeah.
It's how we create. Where else do we're creating from scratch. Yeah. And when we create, we use our imagination. We use, there's creation. You, Morgan, Eric, and I talked about the alchemy through sexual alchemy and how we create with those creational energies.
You just had to mention that this morning, didn't you? Well, there's a whole other doorway there that doesn't require physical presence. I can tell you that. I don't know what's happening with it, but go ahead. So.
I just think, I know it's easy to get mired down. I have personally myself, I have ups and downs. Sometimes I feel like I am riding on a roller coaster at Magic Mountain. It's with my emotions. I have high days and low days. Sometimes I feel it's the collective energy. When you feel the fear in the field, it makes, I can feel my heart speed up. I can feel the anxiety come in. Yeah. And a lot of times I'm asking myself, is this mine or is this the collective? Sometimes it's either or, and sometimes it's and both. Sometimes it is mine. Sometimes I think, wow, should I have left California? A lot of people left California. A lot of people moved. Where are you living now, Todd?
I've been in Arkansas since last year.
So you're in Arkansas. It seems like there's a different energy pulsing there than here in California.
Yeah.
Or in Oregon,
Yeah.
or in New York.
Everywhere I've been, it's been different. And
Yeah.
that's crazy because,
Yeah.
like, for instance, driving to Sedona, I stayed in Oklahoma the first night. You wouldn't think that there are energetic differences, but there are. And I really tapped into that with Morgan's situation and those that are in Australia, especially hers, because I'm so close to it. And I tapped into it and got more understanding, which goes to what we're all doing. And to your point about gatherings, is that her energetic makeup, as close as we are, is different than mine.
Right.
Part of her energetic makeup is Australia. Part of mine is South Texas. I mean, there's all these. So we're going places where we have. If you look at her situation, for instance, she went out, stepped out of her comfort zone, followed the fantasy and the dream and the fairy tale, engaged the magic, picked up massive amounts of code. And this is one person. Goes back to Australia, thinks she's going to do one thing, ends up 2 weeks later being somewhere else on the other side of the country. And she is there, and we are all here in the spots that we're in when we're in them to, hold up the light, to transmute, to anchor the grid, whatever you want to call it. So I really resonate with what you said about these gatherings, because what happens in those things, as her and I were shown when we went last September, and as I was shown as I headed to Sedona, that when these things occur, there's a huge convergence of the same, how you could say a lot of ways, the same desire, the same trajectory, the same
unity
heart,
energy.
unity. Yeah. And then
It's
what
unity
happens
energy.
is when they leave, they carry it with them. And so you can look at an individual person like her doing what she's doing, or you could look at any of us that went to your festival or the festival that we did, and this is the real deal. This is happening, and I don't think we can underestimate the hand of providence, the invisible hand of providence that will move things out of the way if we're clear with what we're doing and why.
I think you're right. I think, I had a dream. I had a dream on May 8th, and I know it was May 8th because my husband and I got in a car accident that day.
Wow.
And it was my biological half brother's birthday, May 8th.
May the 8th. That's my daughter's birthday. See, this
Really?
is how you, yes, it's my youngest daughter's birthday.
Isn't that interesting? So I had this dream, and in it, my biological birth grandmother came to me. Her name was Margaret. She didn't speak. She transmitted energy, and I felt her energy and what she wanted me to understand. She was living in Germany as a Jewish woman, 18 years old, in 1938, 1939. I didn't realize it, but I found out later her birthday is May 10th, 5/10/20. 5/10/20. And my mom, who adopted me's birthday, is 4/10/40. So I didn't know her birthday at the time. I reached out to my birth mother and I asked her, what was Margaret's birthday and when did she come to America? Because of what it was so strong in this dream, this energy that I felt. So she was in Germany and she saw her intuition. She felt what was happening. And this was a very aristocratic family. They had a lot of real estate, a lot of cars. They thought that they could ride it out under Hitler's rule because they thought they had enough food, money, and supplies to outlast Hitler. That was my great-grandmother Martha's thought process. She did not want her daughter to apply for her number to come to America. But Margaret had the presence of mind and the intuition to apply for that number against her mother's will. So she celebrated her 19th birthday on the boat coming to America. Had she not had that presence of mind, I wouldn't be here today. She knew to come over, and she left behind. This is what she placed on my heart. The feeling of her leaving her loved ones, everything that was familiar, everything that she knew, the life that she was used to, she left it all behind to come here because she didn't know what was going to happen. She had a sense of what was going to happen. And 2 or 3 years later, her mother, her father, and her brother were marched into the gas chambers and killed. And what she was placing on my heart was that same feeling of what she felt leaving everything she knew behind because she saw what was coming. And I woke up thinking, am I supposed to be leaving California? Is that what that dream was about? What?
This was a dream.
This was a dream. This was a dream on May 8th. But here's the deal.
Wow, that's powerful.
It was very powerful. And I started thinking, the whole world is in on this.
Yeah.
The whole world is experiencing this. Where do you run? Where are you safe? I feel like we're being given an opportunity to do something different this time.
I agree.
Than what was done before. In order to change things, you have to do something different. You cannot repeat the same mistakes, expecting a different outcome. That's called crazy. So I felt like it was something that was giving me the impetus to speak out more about what I'm feeling and seeing for those who maybe are thinking this way instead of this way. And I don't want to make anyone wrong for where they're at, but I also want to encourage and inspire people to let go of any of our,
Preconceived notions
and really open our minds and our feelings and our hearts to what's happening, and then unify around that. I feel like when we unify, like they did in London this weekend with 2 million people, we're so much stronger when we're together. That's why I bring people onto the water with the dolphins. 55 people merging together, our heart coherence, instead of just me being individual Michelle, it's me being Michelle with 54 other hearts where we're merged together in a container that we've created that holds divine love for all life upon earth.
Yeah.
Even those that we may not agree with.
Yeah.
We can send that love.
Then you have 6 Black Hawk helicopters come from around the mesa and fly right over the tent,
Is that what happened?
That's what happened.
Yeah.
And it happened in a moment, which was a culmination of all the moments up to that point. It was Sunday noon. And I had opened it. Somebody came on. I went back up. Alan Steinfeld and the Hertogs were about to come up. I was about to introduce them. And our beloved sister, Pamela Johnson, walked over to the stage, and we're very connected. We're very soul family like you and I. And nothing was said. I just looked at her and said, "Oh, you want to come up?" She said, "No, I don't. But I'm being told I have to." So she came up and really, in my view, verbalized what I saw happen that weekend, which was an anchoring of the true Mother Goddess energy once and for all, the divine feminine, whatever you want to call it. I watched it happen. It was mind-blowing. But anyway, so she spoke for 5 minutes. I was like I am now, about to jump out of my skin because the energy. I handed the phone to Alan, introduced him, ran outside the tent. And by the way, when she was up there, her feet turned to rainbows, and I have a picture to prove it. I ran outside the tent, and the energy, and then they came around the corner, and I howled like a wolf and told everybody what was happening. They all came outside. But that's just an example of what I'm seeing, and it's not the only time. It's just like that show with Amanda Smith the other day. It's like so many things are taking on. And when I say things, I'm talking about things that we're familiar with in dimension, in dream state, lucid dream, meditation, but they're taking on a physicality now. So her coming on and having a 25 or 30-minute show when evidently you couldn't hear what she's saying. You don't even know what she's saying. There were times it was coming through and her mouth's not even moving all through that 25 minutes. But here's the thing. She came through loud and clear. She came through. Something happened. We were part of something that is happening everywhere. And it's this physicality that's occurring. Mm-hmm. And people talk about embodiment. And again, go back to Hyde Park in London this weekend. That's embodiment. Number one. That's number one. And number two, the force, the pulsation from that epicenter, right, is going to be felt for eons, just like all the stuff that we're doing. And you know, it's like a faucet, like a cosmic fire hydrant on the street corner that's been opened and turned on, and the kids are playing it. You're not going to stop it now. It's not going to happen.
That's the key to live in that space of trust that, mm-hmm. you know, we could look at what's started rolling as a runaway train, mm-hmm. but there's a way when we all come together and we combine our energy that we can stop that train on that track, because we know that we're so much more than just these physical bodies.
Yeah.
And we can will it so. We have the mastery. I'm not pretending to think that I have mastered so much that I could transmute every toxic, you know, substance that's going into my body. I know that, you know, that's probably possible at some point in our evolutionary process. But I do feel that there is strength in numbers when we're aligned with that heart open and with the acute awareness with laser focus. You know, I like to use this. I call this my little bippity boppity boo. Can you see this? This is, do you know Brian Besco?
No.
Brian Besco, he makes a lot of these copper pyramids, and his company's called Twisted Sage. He's out of South Dakota. And he created this ascension portal above our stage at Disclosure Fest. I think it was out of copper, but this is one of his products that he uses. And I like to think of it as almost like a little, you know, something
wand, magic wand. Yeah.
My little magic wand that's going to work.
Well, it's not like you've never done that before in past incarnations. You know, the great thing about what happened in London is that if you look at, I would say, since the Roman Empire, and maybe even before, because things aren't always what they appear, mm-hmm. but the biggest concentration of the program has come from there. So if 2 million people in a very much what I would consider a police state, because when you have one camera for every 14 people in an entire country, there's some shit going on here. But the fact that it happened there, it to me is a huge sign of what's going to happen everywhere else. And again, it is a parallel pattern as within without. We can go here, we can go there, we can go everywhere. And like you said, you always listen to yourself. And the basic component is, as I change, my external changes. My external matches me. And so you got 2 million people. I mean, the Bible didn't say we're 2 million more gather. It said we're 2 or more gather.
Exactly.
So think about the extrapolation on all those zeros in the multidimensionality and how that's going to affect. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. It's going to be like wildfire. And I'll tell you what, I won't be surprised at all regardless of the level of threat and fear in Australia, I would not be surprised at all to see that quickly follow suit.
I think this is the time of the great exposure. Things that have been hidden in the shadows for many, many years are being exposed so that we can see them and we can transmute them and we can unite in our hearts and put ourselves in a new earth, in a new way. A lot of people are doing work in that direction. I mean, you have a lot of these people on your show, Todd, Sandra Walters, and there's some beautiful beings on this earth right now.
Yeah.
And it does feel like the angelic realm is so present with each of us right now. And all it takes is us asking them to work with us. That's it. We have free will. Let's invite them in, legions of angels, to come and work with each one of us so that we're not fighting. We're just being and being what we want to see on earth. I'm sure everyone here in your audience can agree that what we have seen with the division and the hatred and the shaming and blaming, all that keeps us down, it's time for that to go away.
Yeah.
But the beauty is we are diverse. We're not robots. When we see what's happening with technology has risen so fast, and consciousness is still, we've got to surpass the technology because AI is here. And we as humans have souls. We don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose our light. We want to shine our light even brighter.
That's right.
And many people, I think, are coming forward now and gathering the troops, the legions of angels, human angels, earth angels.
That's what I was just about to say. I wanted to share with you was at the Soulogy, and I mentioned it earlier about the Mother Goddess energy being anchored, and I won't get into the specifics. I've talked about it on the different shows, but what I wanted to share with you is the first day. I get there the first day. It's a Friday. Nobody's there. And there was like a dirt road you had to come into, open a gate and come in. Well, there was a gate that you could access from the property and go right to where the road was out front. So I saw somebody pull up, and so I thought I better go help him out. This lady gets out. I never knew her. I never knew her name. I never seen her before. And we locked eyes, and there was an immediate soul recognition. 10 minutes later, another lady pulls up. Didn't know her. Same thing happens. I'm crying, and they're crying, and this happened throughout the entire weekend, and I'm telling you, I don't know the exact number. I don't know if I'm even doing it justice, but there had to be 35, 40 of the 100 that had the same soul. Most were women. There was 4 or 5 men, and then not to say that the other souls weren't relevant, but there was something going on. All of these 40 personalities, these souls, didn't want to be on stage, didn't have a lot to offer in terms of wisdom spoken, instruction. They just had this glow. They had this glow that it just emitted this frequency of, finally, you guys are here. We do the work. We've been here every day, and we will always be here. Thank you for coming, brother. Thank you for coming, sister. I mean, it was such a powerful thing. It left me dumb.
They held that container. You had the intention to have that container of divine love pulsing in your at your event, and all those beautiful beings came forward to hold that container with you, as you. I'm so grateful for all the people that are playing their role, their piece in the puzzle. Every soul is important. And that's one thing that I feel very, very strongly about, is eliminating hierarchy and getting to that the playing field that every single soul is unique and special and loved and cherished and respected and needed.
Yeah.
Every person on earth. I had a lady come to me at Disclosure Fest that I didn't know. Her name was Patty. And Patty came up to me and said, Michelle, I said, yes. And she says, I want to thank you for saving my life last year. I didn't even know this woman. And I said, how so? And she said, I'm a counselor in the school system. She's a licensed social worker. She said, I couldn't get a job in 2020. I didn't have a place to go. And she was home alone, feeling very despondent, very depressed, uncertain. And she said she just felt herself, caving in, I guess. And she turned on Disclosure Fest. We had done a virtual summit in, I think, March and April for Disclosure Fest. And I guess I was hosting somebody or interviewing someone. And she said that through that, seeing the connection on the computer, she felt seen, heard,
Yeah.
loved, and hopeful.
Yeah.
I wanted to cry just knowing that we affected her in that way, that by overcoming all the obstacles it took to change to an online platform and figure out, how we were going to do things differently, it made a difference in someone's life. And I encourage everyone who's going to see this talk that we're doing today, or that's listening right now, if you can affect one person's life right now, you're contributing to the birthing of these new energies just by being you and by caring about someone else. I find that when we go and do that, Todd, when we're, when I'm feeling low and I'm feeling sad and feeling, sometimes hopeless, just helping someone else, one person, makes me feel better. Just knowing that we can affect change with one other person.
A lot of people have talked about out-of-body experiences, near-death experiences, where they get to a point where they have a life review, and a lot of them that have that part of the recall talk about the ripples. And in that life review, of course, you see, which is more in our field up until this point where we're starting to see the other side of the coin, and that is the ripples of my unconscious programming. All right. Now in Sedona, I spent a couple nights with Franco De Nicola at the condo. Well, I had an extra bedroom. Ashley Lee gifted it to us, by the way. And so I spent a couple of nights talking to him. Now, the first night we had a pretty deep discussion because you know how my mind works. And there was things I couldn't really talk about on the screen that I could in that space. And he doesn't like to talk about all these things because he doesn't want to take away from the information that he has. He doesn't want people to get stuck on the story. He doesn't want people to think that he's different than them. But one of the things that he told me in private was he talked about how he had met several, and it's a long story, several out-of-body near deaths. And he had, typical Franco, he had total recall of everything. Now, one of them was different than the rest of them. The one that was different was he met in the field with his guide, and they had a conversation. And basically, what ended up happening was he was allowed to see, because his guide said to him, "Are you ready?" And he said, "Well, whatever, I mean, I'm a team player, but I feel like."
Am I ready for what?
Right. To go to the next, well, in this case, to transition. And in fact, in the story, the guide was like a little bit shocked. "What are you doing here?" So, and Franco was like, "Well, that's what I'm wondering." So he said, "Well, how do you feel about it?" And Franco says, "Well, I feel like I haven't done enough. 36 years this man's been doing what he's doing. Okay. 36 years. And what he saw and what he heard, he got to see the other side, which was the ripples and the effects of his actions of 36 years and so on,
The life
and the
review.
effect that it had on people.
Mhm.
And he said, "Oh my God, well, I guess maybe I did."
How
And
would we act differently?
hmm,
That's something that I think a lot of these people that have had the near-death experiences bring back with them. And I really appreciate Daniel Brinkley sharing that with
yeah,
us, in
yeah,
that how would we act differently in any scenario if we catch ourselves, let's say we catch ourselves yelling at our child.
yeah,
If we can put ourselves in that mode of, how's this going to feel when I do my life review and I realize what that did to my child, or what that did to another human being when I, flipped them off on the freeway, how many times do we see that happening? We get so
Mm.
angry,
Or
and it's like,
what about it, you're making me think now. What about just being, look, we go into dimension, we do meditation, we do a lot of things, right? You said our imagination is our power. I totally agree. What if we took a snapshot or plugged our eyes into the video that's playing in the energetic field as it's happening or shortly thereafter, right? I mean, maybe that's starting to happen too. Maybe we're starting to understand that because people like you bring it up. I mean, so I think there's a lot to be said, and you said this a lot throughout this program. There's a lot to be said for speaking up. And I guess what I was saying at the beginning of the program, which I never finished, based on what you were saying, is that I don't think anyone has a choice. I don't think anybody here has a choice to energetically stay in the background. Now, it may not be today and it may not be tomorrow, but ultimately, every single one of us is front and center because there's nothing to be ashamed of, and there's nothing to lose, and there's everything to gain by sharing the code that we offer. And because we're each unique soul signatures, there are no two the same. One last thing too, just to make that point. Franco talks about the monad. Over the couple 2-3 years we've done shows together, I've asked him about the monad, how that works, because Morgan and I had some monad experiences, and he says there actually is a twin, and then there are degrees of it. But even if there's a twin, a true twin that came from the same soul that split, and let's just say for the sake of this discussion, I'm not saying that's the case, that's me and Morgan. She still stands there, and I still stand here. So even if that's the case in this realm, two unique perspectives. And I think when we talk about things, this is the highest level of activations, downloads, transmissions, and channelings we can have is from each other.
I couldn't agree more. And I do feel that these conversations, everyone, your courage, Todd, your courage to continue having these conversations and to get the information out to so many people is what's needed right now. And for us to stand up, doing it in whatever way we can. There are times where I feel like I'm not doing enough and I'm not using my platform. I'm not speaking out on social media because I don't want to get into fighting or backbiting on a text stream. That's not where I sit. I like to have conversations with people where we can look in each other's eyes and we can respect each other, even if we have a different opinion. And I like to think, what's that saying about the mind is like a parachute? It doesn't work unless it's opened.
Exactly.
I
And say the same thing about what we call 5D or New Earth frequency. If you don't engage it, or what did you say? If you don't open it, it's not going to.
just open to the possibility that, like I got this book. I don't know if you can see what it says. I do not
consent.
This book is by Simone Gold, My Fight Against Medical Cancel Culture. And she's she started America's Frontline Doctors. She's a medical doctor and a JD. So she is an attorney as well. And she has been brutally vilified in the news, debunked this and that. But when you read her book and you read how she was using different drugs in the emergency room in Los Angeles, getting fired for using drugs that were helping all of her patients get over this virus, there's something to be said for digging deeper, doing more research, and not just believing everything that we hear on mainstream news or in political arenas. We have got to open our minds and not stay stuck in it,
Yeah.
but use that information to our benefit to help each other.
Yeah.
And I just don't think it's right for me to stay quiet about what I'm
No.
finding in my circles. And if people don't want to agree with me, then I respect their opinion. I don't feel like we need to barf that on anybody who doesn't want to hear it. I'm totally respect everyone's right to free will. But
Yeah.
I also feel a sense of responsibility to share what I'm finding by having an open mind to seeing, outside of the box, and
I
using that creative imagination and thirst for knowledge and wonder, and the miracle of life is precious. So
yeah.
I
The
want us to have
life,
reverence for all life.
yes, life and living is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Regardless of what happens when this is over,
And love
regardless of
and dancing and singing and
living and love,
I'm having
living
a
in,
speakeasy
yeah.
at my house this weekend with Eric Rankin playing keyboards and singing, and
What?
Gary
And
playing
nobody
blues
invited
guitar.
me. Nobody
Hey, come
invited me.
on out, man. It's Larissa Stowe's birthday on July 4th. She is Larissa Stowe and Shakti Tribe. She is a badass kirtan rock singer who believes in the weevolution, not the revolution, but the weevolution, where
We
we
love
get out
Lucian.
of the I, and we come into the we. And together, everybody achieves more. That's how we are a team. Together, everyone achieves more. TEAM.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And again, I think, I'm kind of feeling and talking to you and then taking into account the last couple of days of my own behavior or where my focus has been, which hasn't been in places. It's been in places at times that I hadn't been in a long time, which includes disclosure things, conspiracy thing, whatever. Uh, I think there's a resurgence happening because there is such a blatant, obvious big elephant in the room that people are acting like isn't, because we've been conditioned to this point. But I guess going back to what you were saying, the importance of saying what needs to be said. There's that old. I remember a few years ago reading this story on Facebook of some palliative care hospice type of nurses did a survey over 5 years, and the number one answer to what would you do if you could do your life over was, I would basically do what I want without any care of what others think.
Oh, that's a
Okay.
big one.
So,
That's a big one.
and then when you said that, I have these, I don't do cards, but I have a friend in India who's been on the show many times, Gayatri Singh, and she's been downloading this since about 2 months before she came on Soulogy. She just started doing dragons and then became an artist and all this. And I don't know why, but some energy came in about 3 days ago, and I'm just sitting with it, and I'm isolating, pretty much not talking to anybody, not even really Morgan. And I said, wonder what's going on. So I pull a card, and it said integration, and I'm like, oh shit, there you go. Now I'm still betting 100 with these cards. I've probably pulled about 15 in the 6 months I've had them. So the next day, I'm all about, I'm not going to compromise. We're all at this crossroads. We will not hurt our soul. We will not compromise. And I pull this card, and it's flexibility. And I thought, oh, well, shit, there you go. Once you're on one end, the other end comes. And right. So then today, I pulled one, and I didn't really understand it till I just heard what you said 3 minutes ago. And it was service. If you look at going back to the example of that life review, if we can just put ourselves in that place for a second, how would we measure ourselves? Well, it probably is unanswerable, but one of those things is to help, to serve.
Yeah.
This is why we came. We came to serve ourselves. Don't get me wrong, but it is all one and the same. Morgan says, Trinity, service to self, service to brother or sister, and service to collective. All in the same motion, all equally served. So I think that when you have 2 million people in London, it says a lot. And a big part of that is it's sending a message to the world. They're in service.
And there were so many. I saw a lot of different videos from that event where people were singing in the streets.
Saging.
They
were
saging. They were
Yeah.
hugging. One of the things that I shared at Disclosure Fest was, I love that we all came together. We did not have masks on. We did not ask people whether you were vaxxed or unvaxxed.
Yeah.
We had no problem hugging each other without even asking if we could hug each other, which is something that has become almost normal again. May I hug you? We just we were in love with each other, and just it was so good to see each other and hug. And I have to admit, I got hungry. My girlfriend had eaten half of her lunch, and she said, "You need to eat, Michelle. You're all over the place." I ate off of her chopsticks. I drank off of her drink. Do I think that's good during cold and flu season? Probably not such a great idea during that season. Did I feel in the moment that it was the right thing to do? I did. I think the fear thing, I want people to make choices that they feel comfortable with. I'm not going to tell somebody I think it's wrong if you wear a mask. If somebody wants to wear a mask, that's their free will. If somebody wants to take a shot, that's their free will. Those things aren't for me, even though I do realize there is something going on. And I'm not discounting that. I'm not. I believe it is time that each one of us take a very firm stand on our health. And I haven't done everything that I feel I should do. I haven't done a juice fast since I did a juice fast. I've done some fasting since all of this started, but it's time to do it again. And I highly recommend getting in touch with some of these doctors who know what to do to help us through getting our immune system in tip-top shape. And it's harder and harder to do these days when you're being violated through your food, through your air, through the water you drink.
111 people in the house when you said that. There's no mistakes. 111.
But it is it is up to us to clean up ourselves and the earth. It is up to us, and it's up to each one of us.
Yeah. Well, it's going back to what you said at the top of the show from whoever you ran into about Mother Earth doesn't need the blessing. So we clean ourselves up, everything else gets cleaned up. And the body is talking louder. It really is. I saw somebody post today, I think it was Dorian, my friend from Salt Lake City, and she said, these energies, you're not eating. Something's going on with the stomach, stay hydrated, and you won't be eating much. And it's happened to me, and it's happening to a lot of people. I see them talking about it. The body's definitely, I think the body's on point. I was working with my light body last night consciously, and I was very aware of what is the word? I was very aware that my light body was fully embodied within this physical Merkaba. Because as I was consciously working with my light body to step out of my body without having to be in dimension or half asleep or whatever, I could feel the, for lack of a better word, the separation. I could feel that. And you know how they talk about having a foot in both worlds? I was sitting there
Yes.
playing with the physicality of it as well as the etheric aspect of it. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. But the body has been, and I've watched people post this, talk about it. What it said to me, and that is, hey, I'm here. I won't be ignored anymore. I'm as much a part of you as your higher self. I'm as much part of you as anything. In fact, I'm on point because this is where your consciousness is mostly stored at an awake state. So there's all this feedback, and I've dropped some habits. I'm trying to deal with everything without judgment of myself. I've been juicing a lot. And these are all kind of new things to me. And I just want to say this to people in regard to juicing. I'm no expert. Morgan's given me some great tips, 80% greens, 20% fruits, what some of the effects of it are. But to me, what I would say to anybody is if you start doing it, especially like me, if you've never done it, you're going to have some serious purging going on. And I don't just mean physically. It's amazing.
It is. I know
really.
When I did my last juice fast with my husband, we've been together 30 years. And my
congratulations.
Thank you. My daughter said to me, you're doing it at the same time? You're both in the same house doing a fast? Are you sure that's smart?
That's a woke kid right there.
The emotions do come up when we're purging and when we're releasing toxins. Think about what that means. We are releasing toxins. Yeah. And, I do feel that it's more important now than ever to release those toxins and do the best that we can to get clean. And we just really have to come into right alignment with our thoughts, our emotions, and with each other for sure. Yeah. And the whole, I think somebody wrote in, it's been hard for me to see the comments, but I did see somebody write in about free will to wear the mask. And I do want to share that it has been a little bit challenging for me seeing a lot of people very attached to the mask. And Fauci did write a paper about how many people died during the Spanish flu of bacterial pneumonia related to wearing a mask. So that's something I think we should all take into consideration. If we feel that we're going to wear a mask, if we feel the mask is protecting us from a virus, which many of these doctors, especially, I think Simone Gold might even say it in this book. She talks about a mask trying to keep out a virus is like a chain link fence trying to keep out a mosquito. So take that in. I want people to realize that there's other things that we can do in regards to staying safe. And it has more to do with building our immune system than wearing a mask or social distancing. I never could say that phrase because I felt like it was a made up phrase to keep us from connecting. So I think it's really important that we take a look at the words that were placed in our field and be very mindful about how we use them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's always that placebo effect thing. I made the statement, having a conversation like this, which I think was yesterday, which was very difficult. It's become everything's become different. So I really see the importance of continuing to do this work and having these conversations, no matter how I feel. But I'm not always 100%. I'm having this conversation, and it was in regard to the shot. And I'm thinking, what if it came to the point where you got to take a vaccine to go to Australia? And in that moment, I said I wouldn't do it, as much as I want to see Morgan. But I did say, unless I was at a level of development and transformation where I can take it on. Because if you look at the history, we've taken on the fluoride and the GMOs and the chemtrails, and we beat it. Now we also have a lot of young brothers and sisters in the form of newborns up to whatever your daughter's age that are carrying a frequency that in itself is supporting us and helping us to expand. And we often think of expansion being in the level of awareness and comprehension and even application.
I understand that, Todd. I do understand where you're going with that. And I want to invite you to consider something, because I have heard people say, I did it so I could travel.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a hard time with that, because if we're going to beat this system, we can't give into it and play by the same rules that it was created with.
Yeah.
So we do have to put our sword in the sand.
No, I agree with you.
And
that's why I said, as it stands now, I would say no. And as it stands now, I would say, kill me, put me in prison. I'm not doing. And then that's just one example of what you're talking about. But how do I know what I will be? Because what I want to be careful about, I'm not advocating that. It makes no sense at all. Makes no sense. But how do I also want to be careful what I speak.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? Because I don't want to limit myself.
That's a
whole,
there's so much truth to that. I cannot stress enough, Todd, that I see so many people saying they're going to make us blah, blah, blah. It's going to be blah, blah, blah. That is, our words are casting spells. When we say something like that, if we see that there is a potential for that timeline, that we must be very careful about how we speak about it, because we can speak in terms like the possibility is there for such and such and such, or I invite you to consider such and such and such, or perhaps maybe we could look at it like this. There are intentions out there that are that want to lock us into that those things are going to happen. And it's up to each one of us to say what we want to see happen, and that those things are not going to be anchored in to this universal consciousness. So important. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're getting more and more familiar. It's all energy. It's not easy to look at everything as energy because of all the experiences that we've had, labels, so on and so on, programming and all that. But it's really interesting to, as we talked about earlier, to expose yourself to as much out there as possible. It's information. The more information you have, the more points of context, the greater the field of new creation. And I even looked at the last couple of days, some of the Trump/Q stuff coming out. And I again am open to everything. I'm open to all those that we think have been against us turn out to be, it's like some crazy flip-flop. But
I want you to see something.
Yeah.
Here.
Who is it?
My husband.
Huh?
He just walked in. Take a peek.
Hello.
This is Brian.
Hi, Brian.
I noticed Shakara was on. I think my friend Lori Taylor was watching. So I just wanted to say,
we've heard a lot about Brian.
Yes.
Right. Ignore half of it.
We'd love for y'all to come do a show together. But that was cool. But final thought on that.
He came upstairs to put away his laundry.
Good husband. But on that note, we're able to see things now that we couldn't see things then. And I'm watching some of these transmissions, because that's what they are. And I'm seeing more and more and more. Now, it's not to demonize anything or anyone, but anything external of me is a reflection of me, but it is not more powerful than me. And I think it's just a reminder to me that no matter what's presented, no matter what the story looks like, it's what you said at the beginning. I make my decisions. good or bad is not an issue, because once you make a choice, you can't have made a wrong choice. You just have a new playing field, a new playground, and the next choice to make, which could be, I take that back. I want to reset that. I mean, how many people in the last few months have gone, I'll do that, and then they quickly come back and go, and I've done it, and go, you know what? I can't do that. It's like we're getting it, so I really appreciate spending time with you. I was happy
I
to see your
love
husband.
spending time with you,
Yeah.
Todd. It's such a joy to be able to just have conversations like we would have on the phone with each
Yeah.
other. These conversations are so important that we assist with igniting others to delve deep into these same conversations with compassion, with an open mind and an open heart, not about right or wrong, just about coming together to dialogue about what we're seeing. And then what do we do about it?
Yeah.
Ask the question, what do we do with this information?
Yeah. Especially when you're getting the multi-dimensional transmission from your sister. Are you supposed to sing a mermaid song?
No.
Okay. I guess your aspect.
I want to tell you this. So
Is there a connection? I'm not psychic.
Kalyani, my sister Kalyani, who I'm in a priestess circle with, she, this oracle of Delphi, this energy coming back, about the oracle priestesses coming back. I've never claimed to be anything other than just, I will say a human being in a human skin.
Right.
I do feel very connected to source, but when it comes to, identifying with the mermaids and the way that the way water moves us and how we move with water, that is definitely something that ignites me. Now, mermaids are known for singing. My voice is not a singing voice, and I know. And so Kalyani asked me to come up yesterday to be with a group of women, to be on film singing a song she wrote. She wanted us all to sing the chorus. And I just said, Kalyani, I don't sing, But I will say that when I was playing drums with the One Drum Women at Disclosure Fest, they had a call and response song. And they pointed to each person to take it and sing it by themselves. And then the rest of the group sang the response. And I was sitting there going, no, please don't point that finger at me, because I don't want to have to sing this song. But sure enough, they pointed to me. And I sang it. And I didn't whisper it and I didn't lip sing it. I actually belted it out, and it actually came out okay in that setting. I felt like it was spirit moving through me that got these words out.
I don't know what the hell that was. I get stuff obviously when I do these shows, but I saw, because it's not words like tell her this. It was just like it showed me that, and I was like, is she supposed to sing a mermaid song?
I won't be singing a mermaid song on your show. Maybe after we hang up, I'll go tone a little bit. That might be something I can do, but I think we're all learning to use the throat chakra. This is an important thing. Sometimes our thyroids are in jeopardy. A lot of people are having thyroid issues because of the amount of EMF frequencies, I guess. I'm not an expert on it, but a lot of people in this area, especially in Southern California, we're by a nuclear plant. And there is speculation around thyroid issues because of this. That's a whole nother topic. But using our throat chakra is so important to that thyroid health. So maybe what you were getting from me, Todd, is to go tone, but I won't do it on the show. I'll do it after the show.
What I was going to say is that, look, I go to Sedona. Well, it's happened before, but something was different this last time, and go into this sacred native chant, this song. I noticed over the years doing what I do that the spontaneity thing is quite amazing, and including light language and just different expressions. But one of the things, it's just like this. This is a great example. Gayatri was connected and had her own, she was a practitioner and had her own tools and avenues and channels. 2 months before I met her, she gets visited by a dragon, then a whole slew of dragons. Then she starts painting. Now, it's
Wow.
one thing to start painting, but another thing to paint with that type of intricacy. And I guess the same thing's happening to all of us, and potentially could happen to any of us. I'm not a singer, but I know that when you're in a certain space, especially if it's a space of support and non-judgment and unity and uniformity in that respect, anything can happen. I watched a guy do it on Monday night after the fest. We had a gathering at the Chocolate Tree, and I got up and said a few things. Ty started playing some music, and I started to just, do the soul speak, right? And this kid walked up, this 25-year-old kid walks up, and he looked at me, and I said, do you want to freestyle with me? He said, yeah. So he went about 3 or 4 different rounds, and he would go, and then he would hit a dead end, and very humbly and unashamedly, he'd say, oh man. I said to him, dude, on the microphone, you're in a space of support. You've got nothing to be embarrassed about. Just keep pushing through. And then I'm telling you, he went through 2 bars.
Wow.
And he just killed it. It was a pure, yeah. And so that's what I'm talking about. Like, I think that I know that we all have these incredible gifts. There's geniuses all over the world. You see it if you search YouTube, you see it. And this is part of the coming out that I was referring to earlier, that we don't have a choice. Now, is it literally going to be the same thing for everybody? Is everybody going to sing and that's the breakthrough? No. But you cannot be seen if you're sitting back there not to be seen. And I believe that's the highest form of gratitude is, look, here I am, buck naked to the soul.
Yeah. I think a lot of us have had a fear of being seen and coming out. Part of it has to do with wanting to be humble and stay in our humility. And, we have to check ourselves, when is it our ego that wants to be seen versus is it necessary to be seen? And I think that's, the question is, where are we coming from in the moment? Is it our heart that's speaking? Is it our ego that's speaking? I really believe we have to ask ourselves questions when we are out in the public. Where is this coming from? Why do I feel I have to deliver this message? But not to be afraid to deliver the message when we really feel the purity of it's coming from a pure place where there's no judgment around it. Just speak it. It is time for us to come out and speak it. And hopefully we can model that for other people. So it gives other people the courage to speak what's on all of our hearts. And I invite every single person here to consider how we speak it is very, very important. The words we choose to use, but the energy behind it. We don't want to be judging and pointing a finger and blaming people when we speak our truth. I feel that's a really important reminder for each one of us, is to come into that place of respect, where we respect what someone else's point of view is. And I also invite us to consider asking for someone else's point of view before we give ours. Hear somebody first before you ask to be heard.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, because having a conversation, an open conversation, being open, no one has to be right. Now, often we would think of that scenario as me and you saying, well, what about this and what about that? But it's not just that. It's about what you're saying and why you're saying it.
Right.
And it's also about what you're allowing to come in and what you're immediately resistant to. I find in having conversations, and maybe it's just me, I thought I was a communicator, but everything changes. I'm somewhat amazed at the amount of times that the perceptions of the situation, and I'm talking about many people, like even in just conversations with people, how far off we are.
Right.
And it's strictly because I don't have your life experience. You know, I think there's a lot to be said for putting yourself in someone else's shoes. It
Absolutely.
immediately
We
brings
think about
to
it.
the best of
Think
your
about it.
ability.
How many
Yeah.
times we can be in the same room with the same group of people. We
Mhm.
can, even my daughter has used this analogy. How is it that we both saw the same movie and we're
Yeah.
saying completely different things about
Yeah.
the same movie,
Yeah.
where we pick up, or a memory? My daughter and I have had conversations about that, where she'll say, "Do you remember that time, blah, blah, blah?" And then I'm thinking, where was I? I remember it this way. And it's
Exactly.
all perception. Our
Exactly.
perception paints our reality.
Yeah.
So being mindful of that, I think, is something that
That's a great example, Michelle. And it's
we would
such
all be well served.
yeah, it's such a benign example too. Harmless in that, okay, so your daughter says, I saw this movie and this happened. You said, I saw the movie and this is how I saw it. And so
Yep.
immediately there's an atmosphere of potential, a pattern. It was a pattern where immediately there becomes this debate. So now somebody has to be right. That's not the point, because both realities are to be respected and they both have something to offer. And we've got to be open. We've got to be open to it, which is the big challenge with what we've talked about a lot on this show for 2 hours is how do you address these things in the field without having a charge, or let me restate that, being as charged as little as possible, especially when you go to speak your truth, because I don't know that any of us are going to be balanced 100% in anything, but at least we can have the conscious effort. And like you said, ask first was a great conscious way to enter that field. And then you do speak, because we can't not speak anymore.
But, and with asking first, another really important thing that we can consider is when we ask, we also have to be willing to listen, to really listen, not just be thinking about what we're going to say in rebuttal
Yes.
or next, but
Yes.
actually being present with the person that we are talking with that wants to share what's on their heart.
Yeah.
And not going into our head about what we're going to be saying next, but actually really, sometimes I find looking in someone's eyes, maybe even holding their hands, and you can break energy up with a joke by saying, "Would you mind if we held hands? I know it seems kind of weird or crazy, but I just want to feel you while you speak to me with what's on your heart, so that I can receive it and hold it with you." And then after they share that, then we can go into, are you open to receiving me sharing what's on my heart, and really listening for their yes, because sometimes they may not be open for it. And that's okay too. If somebody says, "No, I just wanted to share my perspective with you and I really don't want to hear yours." Okay, that's their truth. But we don't have to continue the conversation.
No.
And I do feel that this is part of how we clear those ancestral lines. This is a lot of family dynamics are happening right now with butting of heads, because one family member believes one way and another family member believes another way. But let's not let that divide us, because at the core of our family is our love for each other, and we're mirroring something for each other. There is a lesson here if we can stop for a moment to just be present with it. And I really think that that's where we're going to get ahead, if we can really be present with each other and listen to other points of view, not just our own.
Yeah, right on. Our diversity is potentially weakness, but it's our greatest strength. You know, I mean, and I think America is a great example. And I'm not into nationalism. I don't believe in borders. I don't believe in countries. It's bullshit. It's part of the division. And again, but as a microcosm, if you look at the history of America, and it's just for that reason, as an example, you have this incredible melting pot, which is both its greatest strength and its greatest weakness. And here we go again with the paradox and the polarities. Our job is to bring them together. So, you know, I
With
just want to say,
compassion.
absolutely. Yeah. I've been lit up the whole time.
Yay. Well, I want to give great thanks to all the people. It's hard. The way my lighting is, it's hard to see everybody's name, but thank you, Candace Coe and Moon. And is that Shauna, Bruce? There's a lot of people writing in. And once it goes off my screen, I can't see past it.
Yeah.
But Jennifer, I want to thank everybody for all the comments and writing in and being present with us. You know, it's all of us that can change the world. It really is. And it's up to each one of us. That's really the key message, I think, is coming into our hearts and realizing we are all a piece of this puzzle.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Todd. Thank you, Morgan.
You. I hope to see you or collaborate with you again soon. And
me too. Come out here. Let's.
I'm just like, I think the summer is going to be huge. I think, hell, it's already the end of June. Shit. I thought summer. I mean, so July, August, if I go anywhere, my feeling at this point, just like everything else, is probably mid-August. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm just showing up every day.
And that's all we can do. Show up.
Well, it helps ground me. To show up. And the card I pulled today was service. And you may not solve and come into total alignment with that type of approach, but I'm a firm believer that it'll definitely keep you on your toes. So I love you.
I love you. Thank you so much. Until next time.
Take care. Okay.
You too.
All right. Peace out.
Bye.
Bye-bye.